Let's start recording. Good morning, everybody. Sorry I'm running a little bit late. Today the topic is autosuggestion and the subconscious mind. Has anybody here read this particular chapter and is familiar with it? Okay. If you're outside or doing something like running around or have a lot of noise in the background, would you please mute yourselves? What I'll do is I'll start by asking anyone who has something to say. If you go into your screen, you'll see a button that says raise your hand. It's usually by the manage participants, or on your screen it'll say participants. And you can just click on raise your hand, and that'll let me know that you want to speak, and then I'll unmute you and we can talk about this particular topic at hand. Did anybody read the chapter on the subconscious mind? Okay, Leslie, let's start with you. Sure, Leslie.
Okay. Oh, am I unmuted? Yes. All right.
Yes.
And my dog might bark. I'm sorry.
No problem.
The thing I got from that chapter is that what you think consciously eventually consistently becomes part of your subconscious, and then it becomes actually a part of your being. Really, you know, it's your autosuggestion is actually a part of who you are at that point, and so it's a
excuse me.
question. Constant repetition, but more importantly, it becomes ingrained in the subconscious through autosuggestion, and that way it actually becomes actable. It becomes real. It becomes real, essentially.
Right.
Success.
Right. Very good. Yeah, exactly. The power of autosuggestion is something that we have to be very careful with. It can give us everything we want in life, or it can take away everything we want in life, because negative suggestion is all-consuming. What we're doing by repeating our definite main purpose statement every day is we're creating new patterns of thought. Everything that you have in your life now is the result of your thinking. The difference between somebody who is happy and somebody who is sad is not the external circumstances. It's about how they think. It's the meaning we give to a circumstance. For example, if I get a flat tire, to me it means I have to wait outside in the rain perhaps and change that tire. But to the towing company guy, it means a paycheck for him. For the towing service, it means money. For the cop that stands there, it's his paycheck. So everything has a different meaning as to what the situation is. So what gives everything meaning is us. So we can change that meaning, and we can choose to make a different decision. So one of the things that Alan had said to me in this week's conversation was that you have to be very careful of what's in your statement and avoid certain things that are going to create pictures in your mind. You know, so you know, if you have somebody that's listed every single debt that they have or every problem that they're looking to resolve in their statement, you know, which happened in the past where somebody had a great deal of debt and they just listed, you know, this debt, that. All you're reinforcing in your mind is debt, and the brain does not work that well in that fashion. That's like repeating, you know, 911 every day. It doesn't, you know, the fact that you know 911 happened doesn't change, but what ends up happening is you start creating more fear. And so by constantly reminding yourself of debt, you don't say, oh, gee, yeah, I got to handle that. What happens is you just start cringing, because now it's like what Alan says. Now, what I'm going to do today is I'm going to play a little bit of a video that Alan sent me that I'm going to make available to you guys, because I've been trying to put together a training program. And when I spoke to Alan, he said, well, you can do that, but why not just take what I've already done and just share it with your group? So I'm going to share a little bit of it today. And this way you'll get an idea, but that'll be a little later on. Anybody else want to raise their hands in regards to anything they picked up on the chapter on the subconscious mind? Don't all speak up at once. Josh, you look like you got something to say. No? All right. How about you, Brian? Should I pick on you, Brian? Let's pick on Brian. So, Brian, what did you get out of the chapter?
Well, to me, it was the repetition. As Tony has said in the past, repetition is the mother of skill, right? And so it's that repetition. But what I find when I'm reading my DMPS, I have to look at every single word with absolute clarity and the meaning behind that single word, and absorb that word, consume it, and let that single word manifest inside me, right? Because what I was doing initially was just blazing through my DMPS. And I got to the end of it, I was like, okay, what did I just read, right? It wasn't sinking in. So I really, really slowed it down. And obviously with your help recently, it really has helped me a huge amount. I slowed it right down and consumed every single word and really got some sense of meaning behind it. Then I started to accelerate it, because once I clearly got a grasp on every single word, what it meant, what it's doing for me, let it manifest inside, then start speeding it up. Then I can get it, I've got it down to like one.
Right. Sorry about that. No, sorry about that.
Yeah.
Doing up the video.
And now I've got it down to like 1.3 minutes, right? But going through that process of slowing it down and all that understanding and grasping and manifesting every single individual word, to me now that autosuggestion is working much better, because I'm not just blazing through it and getting to the end for the sake of just trying to get through it.
Right. Right, exactly. And the folks that have done the 100 statement challenge may have realized that as well. As you get beyond 50, you no longer, it's just rote repetition. And plain unemotional words have no impact on the subconscious mind. That's why television advertisers use not only repetition, but they use images and music to generate an emotional state in us. So yeah, as you're reading your statement, I'd rather get 10, 15, or 20 repetitions. And after having done 2 repetitions for so many years, I found that I will never go back to 2 or 3. It's going to be at least 10 or greater. There's a huge, huge difference in the speed in which you memorize the material. And once you memorize it, then you're free to really use your body and to think outside of yourself. Like many times I'll just look up at the sky if I'm doing it outside, or if I'm in the shower, you know, I'll look into the water and gurgle as the water comes down my throat, just to change the experience. And really, you want to experience it, like you said. You want to experience that statement. You want to focus it in your body, and that's really one of the key things. Is, you know, when Alan, in a particular audio, this woman said to him, "Alan, I've been reading my statement for 2 years, and I'm still not doing my 3 threes, you know, 3 contacts a day, 3 presentations a day, and 3 new clients a week." And he says, and she says, "You know, what's happening is my brain is still objecting." And he says, "Of course it's going to object. When you first read your statement, of course it's going to object. If you believed everything that was on your statement, you'd already have it." You know, that's what this is all about. This is really the science of belief, not the science of success. So he said, what's happening is, for 2 or 3 minutes, you're reading that statement and your belief, and then the rest of the day, your brain is saying disbelief, and it's probably doing it in a much more emotional way, you know, and it's saying things like, you know, "You'll never do that, you're not capable of doing that." All those fear, doubt, worry, indecision, and negative thinking from the past is going to filter up. So he said to her, you just have to use more emotion. You have to be more emotional. And he talked about how one, and you'll hear, I don't think he goes into it in this video, but he talked about how he had set a goal to buy a beautiful home in Hawaii overlooking one of the most beautiful beaches. And he had put it into his statement, and he was taking the action, but it just was not happening. For 2 years, the goal did not happen. He was no closer than he had been 2 years earlier. And so finally, he realized that he just did not have enough emotion attached to it. And let me say this, besides the science of beliefs, is you have to be emotional. If you take a look at Derek, you take a look at Ralph, you take a look at Jeffrey, there's a common thread running across these guys who have done $5 million in income. And Alan points that out. And he says, you want a shortcut? Here it is. Get on the balls of your ass broke, where you got nothing else going on. When you're just done, you've hit rock bottom, right? Isn't that what the Dickens pattern in NLP does? It forces us to go to that place where we're done, we're burnt out. So essentially, that's what made these people so successful, is that they were on the bottom. If you heard Derek, he says, I had to have a dramatic change. He emphasized it. When I listened to that audio again, I heard in his voice him saying, I had to change something dramatically. Something just had to change dramatically. He was emphatic about that. And that's because the pain of losing everything, of being on the balls of his ass, after building his business and losing millions. And when it hurts worse? When you screw up, it hurts. But when it's the economy or something outside of your control forces you into a downward spiral, that hurts even worse, and I can sympathize that and empathize, because when I ended up in the hospital, I didn't do anything. I ate clean, I worked out every day, I did my cardio, I lifted weights, I didn't drink alcohol excessively. I took my whole Hogan vitamins. I did everything. I did everything you're supposed to do. And yet some virus finds its way into my heart, puts me in the hospital, $200,000 plus in hospital bills later. I come out of the hospital with my heart working at 10% efficiency. How many people have always said, why me? Yeah, that's where I was. Why me? Now not only did I have a health problem, I also had a financial problem, because health insurance never pays anything. And when you're self-employed, you don't buy the best health insurance because you're paying for everything. And my health insurance was costing me over $1,000 a month, and that wasn't even the best plan in the world. It was a high deductible. I just bought basically catastrophe insurance, so that if God forbid anything happened, I would be taken care of. Well, something did happen, and it still didn't take care of it. And that's why medical has to be revamped in this country somewhere, somehow, because this is an aging population and more people are going to be put into this funnel. So the point being that it was so emotional for for Jeffrey. It was so emotional for Ralph. Ralph was living in the yard in a tent of his friend's house. It can't, other than living on the street, which he had in an earlier conversation, he had said he had done for a little bit. How much lower can you really go? And either those situations make you or break you. You can, it's very hard to lift yourself up from those situations when the weight of the world is on your shoulders. But the power of autosuggestion, and that's why if you heard Ralph and Derek, they said that the self-confidence formula is what did it for them. It wasn't just their statement, it was the self-confidence formula. And you'll hear Ralph saying, the self-confidence formula is so powerful. Why? Why is it so powerful? It doesn't have, that much information in there in terms of specifics, but why is it powerful? Because it says certain things. It says that I have a dominating thought. It says that I understand how my brain works. It says that I know that the principle of autosuggestion, any idea, thought, or desire that I persistently hold in my mind. So what did this self-confidence formula give both Derek and Ralph, because I asked Derek that. Why was this so important? And there was one word he said to me, and I want somebody to raise their hand and take a guess at what you think was the reason why this was so important. Anyone? Otherwise, I will call on you, Ursula. And I got to stop my phone from beeping. Everybody's posting on the group. Nobody? Okay, so Ursula, you win by default.
Oh, great. What's the question?
The question is, why did Derek and Ralph feel that the self-confidence formula was so, so important? Let me set that up first. Everybody, including myself, doesn't really want to do the self-confidence formula.
Oh, I love the self-confidence.
All right, then
I'm a chick. I need to do the self-confidence formula.
Okay.
I think women have a different perspective on that, or maybe it's just me. Go ahead.
No, I don't like it, not because of what it says, but because of the length and the words. That's the only reason I have a problem with it. It's just so long.
For me, that's the base to believing that all that's in my DMPS statement is going to come true. That's helping me with the faith for the DMPS statement.
You just hit the word. That's exactly what he said. He said one word. He said the reason it was so important is because he gave Ralph and I, because Ralph and him were out there walking on the beach because they were both in the same situation. And he said what it gave us was faith. He said, the third line, I know through the principle of autosuggestion, any idea, thought, or desire that I persistently hold in my mind will eventually seek expression through some practical means of attaining the object back of it. Therefore, I devote 10 minutes daily to demanding of myself the development of self-confidence. He said that's what the line does. The statement gives you faith in the principle of autosuggestion. And it tells you that all I need to do is continue to repeat the statement and begin to take even the smallest action. And as that action, you don't have to go, Roger Bannister did not run the 4-minute, example that Alan gave us. He says, you ever see those guys that do the hurdles where they jump over the pole vaulters and stuff like that? How do you, if you start out as a pole vaulter, I think the record is like 20 feet or something like that. He said, where do those guys start? They don't start at 20 feet. They start, vaulting like 5 feet and then 6 feet. And then at some point when they get up there to the 20 feet height, it's no longer like, the guy that beats him is 25 feet. It's, 20 feet, 5 centimeters, it becomes a very little, very small, that 2 millimeter shift as Tony talks about, a very small difference between the guys that are winning and the guys that aren't. So, when we first start repeating the statement, even if we're not doing all the actions, and that's why the actions have to be specific, and the actions have to be what makes the goal happen, the cash register ring, because this is all about a financial goal. And, I'm sure by now everybody understands that the reason why it's a financial goal is because finance is a huge part of us. It affects every area of our life. Every area. There's not even relationships. Number one reason for couples breaking up is, of course, finances. So that's why it was so critical, and that's why you have to include it. I mean, when I did the 100, I did not do any self-confidence formulas, and I wish I had done at least 1 or 2, but I was just happy to be done with the 100. So it's critical that you do the statement and that you do the self-confidence formula. And, one of the things that we discussed is that I tried doing like one statement, one formula, one statement, one formula, and that didn't work out that well. What I switched to is doing like the statement 5 times and then going back and doing the confidence formula 5 times. And if I ever allow the statement to get ahead too far from the formula, I have to stop and I can't do the statement anymore, because the statement I got it down to a minute if I go really fast, where the formula takes about 1.5 minutes. So I'm going to play for you a little bit of this to share with you Alan's story, because there's new people on these calls that are not familiar with it. And I also, the other thing I wanted to discuss with you is, the use of emotions in activating the subconscious mind. And there's a few of them. There's what Napoleon Hill talks about, which is the positive emotions like love, sex, enthusiasm. The one we're using is enthusiasm. By saying the statement out loud, we're getting into an enthusiastic state. And what you want to do is emphasize as you're doing it. And even if you can only do 5 enthusiastically, that's better than doing nothing. I'd rather that everybody do 5 really enthusiastic statements and self-confidence formula than to do 20 really fast. If your statement sounds like, it is your life worth it, ain't work. And repetition for the sake of repetition doesn't do anything. It helps you in memorization, but it doesn't do anything. I'd rather that you really emphasize it, that you really get it into your body, that you really get involved in the statement. So, okay. So I'm going to share my screen here, and let's see where we're at. Windows Media. Okay. Let's bring this here.
We're going to pass out. We got several things that are coming out for you. But in all of our workshops, we always have a bit of a working lunch. And this is a little different because Philip doesn't have so many working lunches, but with our workshops, we try to bring you a working lunch. And why we have the working lunch is because sometimes you have the knowledge, but you want to build it into a skill. I want to build this so that you guys have something you can practically use when you go home. Does that make sense, everybody? So you guys have the motivation, but how long can you keep that motivation? How long can you keep it? I'm going to give you a tool that makes it permanent. I'm going to give you permanent in your motivation. Would you like that? Yeah.
Okay, this is the part that I really wanted to emphasize. We can read another book. We can go to another seminar. We can participate in tons of seminars. Like I see people messaging me all the time. Bob Proctor has a seminar. Tony Robbins has a seminar. So-and-so has a seminar. Okay, great. If I need a temporary boost in my motivation, I'll go to the seminar. If I need to meet some nice, positive-minded individuals, I'll go to the seminar. But if I want lasting, permanent change, I'll read my statement. Okay? That's what this is really about. This is not about another rah-rah meeting, another rah-rah session. And yes, Tony uses NLP. He got sued by Grindler years ago. He can't use the name NLP anymore, so he calls it neuroassociative condition to get around the trademark issues. The point is that even NLP, which is based a great deal on Milton Erickson, who was in hypnosis, is all about suggestion. I mean, a lot of the exercises use guided imagery, guided visualization. And even if you're doing those exercises like the Dickens pattern and tons of other patterns that have been developed, you still need one principle behind them to make them work. And that is one exposure to new material doesn't change anything. It's the repeated exposure. So one time that you do the Dickens pattern is not going to work. It has to be done every day or at least once a week. And so the statement is a way for us to begin to change our mental habits. And this will lead to permanence. Because if you're trying to change something in yourself and you have a habit that is more powerful, the habit's going to win. And so what we're working with here is not changing our thoughts. We're changing our thought habits. So that if you have a difficult situation, like during the 100-day challenge, I realized that I ran into a difficult situation. Immediately, my first thought was read the statement. And since I don't normally read this, because I was reading it so many times. It wasn't like read it once. I read it 5 times. And after 5 times, I started changing a little bit. There was a little bit of a shift. So I went to 10. And by 10, I was totally refocused on my goal and ready to get back to work. So what you're doing is you're replacing the thoughts. You know, you have an argument with somebody. What's going on in your brain? The argument isn't over the moment you walk away. The argument continues in your brain, and you may go to a friend or a relative and start revisiting that. And, you know, now you want validation of your own opinion or whatever. And now you're going to repeat it again. So you're going to dig it in deeper. And now what does it have? It has emotion behind it. You know, so now you're just driving it home. You're taking a giant sledgehammer on that experience and you're driving it home. And if there's anything negative or anything that affects your self-esteem or your self-confidence in the argument that occurred, then you're basically driving in doubt into your mind about your own abilities. So the best thing to do is just forget it, go read your statement, and go focus on what you really want in life. End of commercial.
So like Philip Chun and myself, and Steve Wong, and many others, I was with about 2,000 team elites on this last cruise. 2,000 people that are free. Some of the most fun times I have with my family is just having breakfast with these people. I love my kids to sit around the table and talk with these team elites, because the breakfast conversation is different when you're with type 5. The breakfast conversation, I think, is the best education in the world for my kids. I cannot figure out why they don't teach this in school. Can you guys figure out why they don't teach this in school? Shouldn't they teach it in school? We need type 3. We need type 3, she said. Right? My goal this year is to teach this to my kids. That is my only goal this year, to teach, to have time and teach my kids this philosophy of success. And Philip and I come to this philosophy of success maybe in similar paths, but sometimes in slightly different ways we can describe this philosophy of success. And today I want to give you guys a little of this philosophy of success from my side. And many of you, I noticed a lot of new faces in the room today, so I thought I'd take a couple minutes just to take some time about who I am and my story. And I'm going to be covering some bullet points from Philip's work, because I think sometimes as he's going through the example after example after example, I don't know how you feel, but I start taking notes about the examples, and I sometimes miss the bullet points. So I want to bring it back to bullet points before lunch. But I'm going to give you a very big tool that you're going to work with at lunch. So my story is, you know, Alan Nagao from Honolulu, Hawaii. This was one of my favorite toys when I was a kid. This toy was my favorite, and also I had a little skateboard. And this was my favorite toy because that's how I got around as a kid. I got around on a skateboard, sitting down on my skateboard and riding it all over the neighborhood. That's how I got around. And this was really cool too, because I could sit in it, pedal it, and I could get around. And the reason why is because when I was a kid, I was born without a leg. There was some drug that was given to my mom, and it was to prevent morning sickness. But at this time in the early 60s, this drug, thalidomide, caused huge amounts of birth defects. A lot of children were born with little flippers for hands or without legs. Mine, in my case, is, you know, my artificial leg comes to here. And so this was my life, how I started my life, my story of my life. I want you to think about your story, how you got to this point in your room. Because what philosophy of success is about how to change your life, how to change your story. That's what we're talking about here, how to change your story, how to get to a different story. Now for me, this is how I began my life. I began first without a leg, so just riding on a skateboard. Can you imagine what my life could have been like? I was just in Istanbul. And, you know, I'm probably the worst person for one of those beggars to ask money from, because I never give it to these beggars. I know their life has so much more possibilities than that. I'm the worst. I mean, really, you don't want to be around me if you're in India begging for money with no legs, because I just don't have that sympathy for these guys. So my life like this, I remember learning to walk with my artificial leg, and sometimes it just wasn't there. So I'd be walking and I'd be on the ground. So quickly, they have to give me this helmet to wear. And I can remember this helmet like it was yesterday. I can feel the strap underneath my chin because I have to wear it throughout my elementary school. And I went to a regular public elementary school. So I don't know if you can imagine what it feels like to have to wear that stupid helmet every day, but I hated that helmet. Why? Because I wanted to be like everybody else. I wanted to be like everybody else. I wanted to be like the other kids. But I had to wear the helmet because sometimes I'd walk too close to the steps and I would be on the bottom of the steps just with nothing. I mean, it happens to me every now and then still yet, right? I'm walking along and people go, what happened to you? Well, why are you on the ground? And it just happens. It's just like that. And so I remember being in the first grade, and I left the room to use the bathroom. And when I left the bathroom, when I went to the bathroom, the teacher actually assembled all of the kids and said to the kids, you need to treat Alan different. He's special. That was the last thing I wanted. Because I wanted to just be like everybody else. I came back into the classroom, and the worst feeling, no kidding, was the kids trying to help me with everything from then on. I hated that feeling because I just wanted to be like everybody else. I remember in the third grade, my mom picking me up from school one day, and she said, Alan, what's wrong? And I say, I'm so tired, Mom. I'm just so tired of being teased every day. I'm just so tired of peg leg and hop along and pirate and all of this stuff. And she said to me something that day I'll remember the rest of my life. She said, sticks and stones will break bones, Alan, but teasing never hurt you. And it wasn't until kind of recently that I realized she was actually wrong. That teasing does hurt you. And that was my life. That was my life. I remember in school, as the teams would be picked at recess time. Every recess, the teams would be picked. And I was always the last one to be picked. And the team that finally got me is like, their heads all would be down like, oh, like they've already lost the game. Because I couldn't run with the rest of the kids. So can you imagine being picked last every single time? What do you think I was thinking about my life and where I was going? And so things really were like that. I remember in the 7th grade, as we were, people were starting to have girlfriends. And I was thinking to myself, I wonder if I'm ever going to have a girlfriend. I wonder if I'm going to ever have, I wonder if I'm ever going to get married. I even thought, I wonder if I'm ever going to have kids. I mean, I'm missing my leg to here. I hope everything else is working. But that was my thinking. You know how you feel so in the 7th grade. You're worried about everything. You remember those times? I was worried about things. And it only started to change in high school when I realized that I love surfing. I love surfing. The only problem with surfing was getting in the water. Boing, 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 boing down the beach, splash in the water. Once I was in the water, I was like everybody else. I was the same like everybody else. I love boogie boarding at Sandy Beach. But the difficult thing, I had to take off my leg at the top of the parking lot and I had to hop down the beach. And as I'm boing, 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 splash into the water, everybody on the beach literally stops and looks and stares. And I hated the feeling. I hated the feeling of being stared at. You know, in sophomore year in high school, how you feel about people staring at you? But I have to make a decision. Was I going to let what other people thought or do control what I did? Or was I going to do what I love to do? And I can tell you by result what happened for me, because I was not the best high school student. In fact, you know, my mom was so happy when I graduated on time. You know, like, oh, Alan, you graduated on time. She was so happy. I was so happy too. Wasn't the best student, but I surfed almost every day. Boing, 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 splash. And boing, 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 boing up the beach every afternoon. And why I'm telling you that story is that you will probably have to make that decision at some point in your Nu Skin career. Whether you're going to go after what you love to do, your dreams, or whether you're going to let what other people think and do control what you do. And I can tell you that from that point, my life started to change. And then I didn't actually graduate from college. I think similar to Philip, I was about a year and a half into college when I finished college. I finished college and I opened up a kite shop. Can you click me forward? I met my mentor very soon after that. I opened my kite shop in Alamana Shopping Center. And then I met my mentor, you know, Mr. Joseph Green. Joseph Green was actually, when I met him, he was 88 years old in 1986. That means he was born in 1897. And he was tutored by a man named Napoleon Hill. Napoleon Hill wrote the book, Think and Grow Rich. Anybody knows that book? This is kind of required reading for us. I'm going to ask you guys all to buy that book and read that book thoroughly. Read it the way it was meant to be read. That's what my mentor actually taught out of. But he gave us a lot of insights in between the lines of Think and Grow Rich. One of the things we're doing right now is we're running a book club every Sunday, and we teach subjects. In fact, Mary Helen, I think, is doing tonight's one on the subject, tomorrow night, on Sunday night, on imagination. A lot of what Philip is teaching is in that book. Trust me, you can study it repeatedly if you study the book. I also have Philip Sung's photo on here. You see that? Because he's one of my mentors right now. I just want to recognize you, Philip, because you have changed my life. You know, it's so wonderful to work with somebody in sync. Butterflies with butterflies. It is so, I'm so grateful. And he gives out of his heart. How many people in here are Philip's downline? I know there's a few, but not very many. You can see in the back row, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 in this room. He's come all the way this way. He spent all of these days here for 7. And he has tens of thousands of downline to teach and to give to. And he's willing to give to us. I mean, do you appreciate that? But it is the way that I believe as well. I know that I've attracted this mentor into my life as well. Just like the way I attracted my mentor, Joseph Green. Put me forward. So I'm going to cover just a couple concepts that I want you to take home with you. In fact, we have a flyer, and Claudia, I don't know if you can help me out, but if you can get these out. It's on the bottom here. We have the definite statement over here too. Yeah, it's way down there. You want to get it? But I'm just going to cover real quickly these points. Number 4, type of thinker. Number 4, now what I want you to do with that flyer, if you want to put any notes on it, you want to mark it up, whatever, but I want you to put that flyer where you see it every morning. On your mirror. Maybe in the morning where you brush your teeth, or maybe if you want to put it where you just wake up, it could be on the roof above your bed, on your ceiling, I should say. Put it somewhere you're going to see it right away in the morning, because this element is what Philip has been talking about all weekend. Your response. Your thinking will control your results. To think is to create. And how you think makes a difference in your results. So on the right, you see the difference in the thinkers. The number 4 thinker has no stars. And what our stars represent? Goals. Having no goals. Now, I know many of you are thinking, well, I have goals. But there are going to be times in your new skin business where you don't have goals. You will find yourself going down the road thinking everything's fine and dandy. Some dream stealers will come along, or some obstacles will come along, or some difficulties will come along. People will quit your business, or people will just get apathetic and never call you back. And suddenly, you cannot remember your goals anymore. It disappears. And when that happens, I'm going to tell you what my mentor taught me. He taught me to literally write or commit your goals to paper. Today will be your day to commit your goals to paper. And so if you guys could click me forward. Can you click me forward? One more time. So what happens when people don't have goals is there's no reason to go through the obstacles. So you just stop. What I'm going to recommend is that maybe 60 to 75% of your life will be spent with no goals. You will not remember your goals. So remember what you wrote and look at what you wrote. Go by what you said you were going to do, not by what you're thinking of doing at the moment. Do not change your goals except at the top of the mountaintop. So what my mentor would say is that when you are completing your goals, then and only then set your next set of goals. I have set about 8 goals in my life for the last 27 years. What my mentor failed to say was that when you're at the top of a mountain and you set your next goal, he forgot to tell me that there's a big valley most of the time between goals. And maybe some of you are going through a valley right now. Any of you going through some valleys right now? Okay, so those are kind of typical of setting your goals really big. You will hit some valleys. What you need to do is just go by what you said you wanted during those valleys, not by what you want at the moment. Do not change your goals at the bottom of a valley. Change your goals from mountaintop to mountaintop. That's the only way you're going to set goals worthy of you. Can you click me forward? What do you notice about number 3 thinkers? What do you notice in the picture, the diagram? Lots of goals. So what happens with number 3 thinkers? They go after their goal, and when they're getting to their goal, they find an obstacle, and what they do, click me forward, is instead of going for their goal, click me one more time, they go and change their goal. They change their goal. This is like, I'm going to be a Ruby executive. And it gets a little tough, and all of a sudden it's like, you know what? I think I want to learn piano lessons. Okay, it's like all of a sudden something else becomes more important, and before you know it, changing goal after goal, you become spaghetti brain. So click me forward a little bit. How many people recognize this thinking pattern? How many people recognize it in themselves? Right? Now, if you know you're a number 3 thinker, at least you have goals better than a number 4. But start heading to the left. Be more focused. That's the solution. So you go and be a number 2 thinker. Now, number 2 thinkers are very focused. Took me 4 times. But the problem is that number 2 thinkers are focused on the problem, not the goal. They're focused on the problem. And what happens when you're focused on the problem? Whatever you think about enough will get bigger. And what happens is that they keep on focusing on the problem, and before you know it, they look like this. And when they're looking like that, they become the problem. You become the problem. If you focus on the problem enough, eventually you'll become the problem. And we want to avoid this kind of thinking process, but at least you're focused. All you have to do now is do number 1 thinking. Number 1 thinking, what I call blue diamond thinking, is for you to focus on the goal. Focus on the goal. Will you hit obstacles? Absolutely, you will hit obstacles. But as you hit the obstacles, continue to focus on the goal, and continue to focus on the goal, and continue to focus. Something I'm coming up to right now is my birthday. June 21st is my birthday, okay? I tend to set my goals on a special date. And in my case, my goal special date is my birthday. Now, I have not always hit my goals on my birthday. I set a 1-year goal, but oftentimes it takes me more than 1 year to hit a 1-year goal. So I want to explain what to do when you don't hit your goal, because I'm coming on that date right now. And I'm kind of reviewing. I'm starting the review process. And what I review, what my mentor taught me to review when you're getting up to that birth date, the actual date that it was supposed to happen, is to look at 3 things. Number 1, am I stating my goal twice a day out loud? Am I doing it out loud? Because what I need to develop is a burning desire for what it is that I want. And if I am not absolutely with a burning desire, I will not launch the most important part of the mind, the subconscious mind. Once I have a burning desire, white heat of desire, that will launch. So am I doing that process, which is called autosuggestion? Doing your statement every day. Number 2, am I doing my self-confidence formula every day out loud? Because having confidence and belief is really important to get your goals. And the 3rd thing I review is, am I emotionalizing my goal? What could make my goal more emotional, more real for me? How could I make my goal more real for me? And I remember probably the longest one took me 4 years to get my goal. That was to build a beautiful home. I wanted to build a home for myself. At the time, I was living in a very small room in my mother-in-law's home. I set a goal to build a home, but you know, my mentor said, anything is possible. It's not like steps or anything. Just decide what it is you want and then go after it. I decided to build a multi-million-dollar home on a mountain overlooking the ocean. In fact, it is the home that I live in right now. But when I set the goal to build that home, I could not feel it. I can tell you, maybe it was my worthiness. I never felt worthy of a home like that. I didn't even know how to, I took architectural drafting in school. I tried drafting my home and I couldn't even draft a beautiful home. I finally had to go and look at million-dollar homes to see how they were built, because they're built differently. You know, the ceilings are higher, the stairways are wider, the windows are different, the outside, exterior is different, the type of everything, the doors are different, the chandeliers are different, everything. So I had to go and study this and look at it, and I finally drafted my home. But somehow, every day that I did my statement, nothing was coming together. And every year, at the end of the year, I would review, am I emotionalizing this? And I would say, it isn't really emotional. The first year, I didn't hardly even say my goal. The second year, I tried again. When you don't hit your goal, start again, but don't change your goal. The third year, I was really frustrated. Nothing was happening. I wasn't getting any closer to my goal. I decided to change how I was going to get my goal. Instead of building a beautiful home for myself and my family, I decided that I was going to build a beautiful relationship with my dad. He was a general contractor. And if I built this home together with my dad, so my goal was to build a relationship with my dad, and as a result of this, we would build my dream home. And that's exactly what ended up happening. That year, as I started to say my statement about building a beautiful relationship with my dad, all of a sudden emotions got into me. I could feel it because my dad was always a general contractor, but he was really a general. And so he would tell us what to do and we do it. That's our relationship. It was a great relationship. We knew he loved us, but that was how we worked. And I wanted a close relationship with him. So when I started to state my statement, I cried and I got emotional, and all of a sudden it connected that very important element. Emotion will drive the statement into your subconscious mind. And within 1 year, I bought the beautiful piece of property that is now where I live. You have to visualize your perfect end result. I remember growing up, and I have a mastermind. That time I had a mastermind of about 6 people that would come up with me to the home. Now, I had no way of building the home. I didn't have enough money. But we would go to the top of the hill, sitting literally on a little portable bench and white tablecloth, and my mastermind would serve me breakfast at the top of the hill as I overlooked the beautiful sandy beach and whales out in the water. We'd have coffee and things out in front of, can you imagine just sitting on dirt? I'm just sitting on the property itself. There's nothing there. But we were visualizing the perfect home. I would walk through my home every night. I would walk through, before coming here, I was sitting on my breakfast table, drinking coffee, overlooking the whales out at the ocean. That's my home that I live in right now. And I want you to understand something about this goal-setting process, because so it doesn't happen all the time exactly on the date. It doesn't matter. Set it again. I'm more committed now than ever before to my goal for this year. June 21st is coming. I'm going to do my goal. I'm going to state my goal as best as I can until June 21st, and then I'm just going to change the year to 2015. I'm just going to change the year by one year. Do you guys see that? Okay, I'm giving you specific instructions because I want you guys to understand this process absolutely works. I've gotten every single goal I have set. One of my goals after building my beautiful home is I had a huge mortgage. It was a problem. I built a multi-million-dollar home with no money. When I got done, I had a huge mortgage. My mortgage was over double my actual salary. My mom, 70-something years old at the time, was paying half of my mortgage. I was in deep trouble. I decided to pay off my home in 2 years. I ended up paying off my home in 1 year and 7 months. Okay, what is possible with this process that we're talking about is incredible. So this process put me forward. It's called the definite main purpose in my statement. Your assignment.
Okay, I wanted to stop that there before he goes into the statement itself, but I wanted to give you an idea of, or a taste of Alan, where he's from, what his struggles have been, because he's not your average individual. And like he said earlier on, he could have been one of those people in India begging for money in the streets. He has one hand, and one leg. And they're both on the same side of his body. So he's not even balanced well. And that's why, he's had these obstacles. Yet this man, very similar to Napoleon Hill's son, who was born without ears, took his disability and didn't say, this, I can't have anything in life. That's it. I'm done. I'm going to be a disabled person the rest of my life. I'll live off, government social disability income, and that's the kind of life I'm going to have. And believe me, he would have qualified. I mean, one leg and one hand, no matter how tough the disability laws are in this country, and he lived in Hawaii, he qualified. But he didn't do that. So what disabilities do we have that we think are more powerful than actually being born with a real disability? And that's why, Alan impacted me so early on, because it would have been very easy for him to say, hey, this is the way I was born, my mom took this medication and now I don't have an arm and a leg, and, I can't do anything. But he didn't. And so before we continue this conversation, I hope that you guys took notes, because when Alan speaks, there's what he says and there's what's underneath what he says. And so I want to get some feedback on what impacted you from this call, because there was a lot of stuff there that really is just incredible. So if you want to raise your hand, just go to participants. It's in your dashboard. Just click on raise hand and I'll call on you. Okay, let's go with Joseph. Go ahead, Joseph.
First time I've watched that, I've heard you speak about Alan's story before. And what I got out of it, I do a good amount of goal setting, but what often happens is that if I don't reach a goal, I'll cross it off and kind of create a new goal. And what I've realized is that in kind of having, when I do that, it creates like a negative reference point for myself. And such that in my mind, I'll tell myself, well, I didn't do it. I didn't make it there. Or I didn't play full out. Even though the goal still inspires me to some level. So what I got out of that part of, I captured a lot of notes, but what I got out of that is that it would be serve me to restate the goal and emotionalize it, follow the parameters as far as all that goes, and the other elements, emotionalize it. And if I need to, kind of frame it in such a way that it serves, like, connects with my values. Like, and Alan shared how he framed it in such a way where he could have a relationship with his father. And I see where I've done that in the past, where I've actually hit the goal now by really honoring my values and honoring, like framing it in a way that kind of honors aspects of myself and honors others too at the same time. So that's one thing I got out of that. So that's my share.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Let's go with the man himself, Edwin. You're on.
All right, thank you. No, what I was looking, I was just taking some notes here. What I got from the video was because this is something I also had in mind. I was thinking I don't want to mention it because I was like, if I don't, let's say it took everybody 2 years to reach. Sometimes if you set a big goal, it takes 2 years to reach your goal. So something in my mind was what if I don't reach my goal like in 1 year? So like I guess my question was, what should I start doing, or what kind of questions should I start asking as I'm nearing my goal and maybe I'm not exactly there? So I'm like, when he laid out the 3 things about, are you not saying it enough times? Are you not saying your self-confidence enough times? And then the last times, are you not emotionalizing your goal enough? So those 3 things, I mean, I might, instead of like waiting, maybe right before, maybe I might have these questions like as I'm going towards achieving my goal. I'm gonna keep these questions in mind as I'm going through the process of doing my DMPS, my self-confidence formula. These are 3 questions that I guess Alan's mentor told him to ask himself as he's near his DMPS date. So these are 3 questions I feel like that I'm definitely gonna implement as I go along achieving my DMPS.
Yeah, I would suggest that you ask those questions on a weekly basis. Number one, am I doing enough repetitions? Number two, am I reading my self-confidence formula? And number three, how can I emotionalize my goal more? Now, I'll give you an idea. This gentleman that we met who was mentored by Alan, and he created in Japan what's called the One World Store. It's like the Walmart of Japan. And he started out, in Japan, it's a very, it's a little bit easier now. There was always a caste system. If you're born into a certain caste, that's your life. And so most of the religions in the Eastern society or in the Eastern world understood that there's a caste system. So they always told people, be happy eating walnuts because, the reality is that you're not going to be able to change your caste. And why America differed is because unlike Europe, unlike Asia, it didn't matter. When you came to this country, it didn't matter who your parents were or weren't, and it didn't matter what caste or what income level or what occupation your family was born into. That's why America became the land of opportunity. Because in Europe, if your parents, were not of a certain caliber, you could not rise. The same thing in India, Asia, Pakistan. You name the country. They didn't have that. That's what made America different, is that somebody could come here and go to, and as long as they were willing to work hard, right? That was the old formula, work hard and find the right opportunity, they could climb. And how many, you read, you hear about American success stories all the time, but we don't hear those success stories coming out of too many other countries. Even Europe has a problem still. There's still a huge caste system there. And it's not about, and that's a society where it's not what you know, but who you know that really impacts where you're going in life. And it does so here to some extent, but we still have opportunity. There's people every day that are making it, regardless of what poverty level they were brought up in. So this individual was born, he was just a clerk, and he got a hold of Alan's teachings, and he decided that he was going to have a net worth of, I think it was 1 million yen, and I forget what the conversion was at that time. And so he wanted to emotionalize it, and since his goal was to have a net worth of 1 million yen, he didn't know how to do it. So a buddy of his was the bank manager, so he begged, pleaded, and convinced him one day to let him just stand in front of a pile of money, and in the vault, and security was all around and everything. I don't know how he pulled it off, but I guess his desire to succeed was greater than the other person's willingness to say no, which is something we need to understand. In scroll number 1 of The Greatest Salesman in the World, or The Greatest Secret in the World, it says, failure will never overtake me if my desire to succeed is strong enough. Failure will never overtake me if my desire to succeed is strong enough. So they didn't even have 1 million yen in the vault. I think he said they got as close as 800,000 yen, but he took a picture anyway, and he put that picture everywhere, and he just visualized himself at that. So how do you emotionalize it? Okay, number one, if your goal is to have a house, to own a car, whatever it is, make it real. I explained to you when I was having my house built, or maybe not, you haven't been on the call long enough. When I was having my house built, I used to go out every Sunday and look at models of homes and take pictures, and I would grab floor plans. My buddy, his goal was to have a ranch in Texas, and so he hired a architect to create the blueprint of the ranch he wanted. And when I went to his house, he had the architect or whoever does this type of work create an entire little model of the ranch he wanted. And he wanted a horse ranch. And there was, and I went to the house, and at first I saw this in his living room, huge. It was like on one of those, plastic pieces, and little trees were in it, and little houses, and little horses, and little dogs. And I'm like, oh, wow, this is great. Your kid did this? This is fantastic. What was it, for a school project? And he's like, no. He says, I had the architect make it. It's a life-size replica of the ranch that I want to have built in Texas. And Sam Colello was his name, who passed away recently. He did it. He moved out to Waco, Texas, and bought a ranch, had it designed from the ground up, and he was involved in buying and selling Arabian horses. Him and another gentleman, I forget his name. He owns it'll come to me. Him and another gentleman were involved in a organization that breeds from Arabia into the United States, and they sold purebred Arabian horses, and that's what he did. And hey, when every day, he was living in Wayne, New Jersey, and he owned an insurance agency, the Sam Colello agency. When you walk when you walk home every day and you see this model of the ranch you want, with the little horses and the little, I don't know if he had chickens, but let's add them in there anyway, and a little dog and little pictures of like himself, represented himself. When you see that every day, that emotionalizes it, So I didn't go that far, but I took the floor plans. I talked to the contractor. I went and looked at homes all over the state, and finally, when I found my home, I had set a goal to save $50,000, because at that time I had a 2-family home, and it was going through a time period where real estate had dipped, and so I thought I'd have equity in my house because I'd been in there for about 6 years, but instead of having equity, I was upside down, and so I realized that if I'm going to get a new house and I don't want to pay PMI, insurance on it, that's because I didn't want to borrow. I wanted to have at least 80% down, and this was a $300,000 house. I set a goal to save, $60,000. And so I did, I sat down, I wrote down the goal. I went every Sunday to see different models. We found the floor plan we wanted. We took pictures of everything we wanted. We put it on there. And even after we had decided on the home, we would drive every Sunday, because it was an hour and a half away. It was in a real suburban area, and we would drive every Sunday out to the house, even in the winter, and we would go to the restaurants in that area. We acted on Sunday as if we lived in that area already. We would go to the restaurants, we would go to the local places, we would identify the banks, the supermarket, everywhere, so that in our mind we were already living there, even though all they had done is dig out the foundation, and at the end, the house took over 3 years to build, and by the time it was built, I had saved over $120,000 in cash. And that's not counting the money that I had in my 401k and my IRAs. So, when I went to the mortgage guy, and, I had already given them, the contractor, 10% of the money to hold the property. I think it was $10,000. Sorry, it wasn't 10%. He wanted $10,000 when I originally put the contract in. So I call up the mortgage guy, and I'm like, okay, I says, I need you to change the numbers. He's like, oh, you don't have enough money down? He says, well, I can probably still get you the same approval. I said, no. He says, I want to put down $120,000. And now, if you know anything about real mortgages, you know that they get a percentage of the total amount borrowed. So if I lower his amount borrowed, his commission is reduced. So he's like, oh, no, you really don't want to do that. You're going to have other expenses. And I said, don't worry about that. I says, go ahead. And of course, now that I'm putting down almost, 35%, I expect you to get a better rate for me, because otherwise I'm going to shop your ass. So anyway, he didn't like that part either. The point that I'm making is, how did I make it real? I would visit it every day. I would see exactly, I would contact the builder and say, why is this house not being moved on? I was here last week and it's wide open. The roof hasn't been put on yet, and he would give me some attitude like, oh, well, if you don't like it, you can back out. And I said, sure, no problem. You want to put that in writing so I get my $10,000 back? And if you don't want to put that in writing, so I would contact my attorney and have my attorney send him a friggin' letter and telling him, and it was always a bullshit dealing with these things. But because I was there every day, every Sunday, and because the squeaky wheel gets the oil, he eventually got off his ass and finished the house. And it still took 3 years to do, which it shouldn't have. That house could have been built in 3 months. But the way builders do it is when they're making a development, is they don't want to use their own capital, so they grab all these deposits from people and use those deposits to fund their payroll and equipment, plus the bridge loans that the loans that they get from the bank. So Think about how you can make it real. If in your statement you don't have 1, 2, or 3 tangible rewards, if all your rewards in your statement is, if your statement reads, as a result of my genuine effort, I'm experiencing time and financial freedom, abundance, peace of mind, and excellent health. Those are intangible. They're not going to motivate you. They're states that we want, and we want to affirm them, but they're not going to get you up in the morning. I used to have salesmen that would say, oh, I don't need a goal because paying my bills is a goal. Well, you know what? No, it's not. Nobody gets up in the morning and goes, gee, I'm so driven. Today I'm going to work 15 hours because I get to pay my bills. Yeah, it doesn't happen. So you need something tangible. And my buddy, oh Christ, I'm going to remember his name. He's down in Waco too. He just passed away also. He was on a call one time and he sent me the audio, and the interviewer asked him, is it, a lot of people set goals for tangible things, like a new car or a new house, and he goes, and the interviewer was saying, but those things are not what people want. He says, what people want are the states that having that new car or new house give you. And he says, what do you think about that? And I forget his name. God, I feel so bad not remembering him. And he turned to him and said, hell no. He says, I set goals for cars, for houses. I want things. I'm a big things person. If I see something on TV, I tie that into my goal. I don't go out and buy it, although I can. I'm worth millions, but I don't buy it. I just put it as part of my goal statement. This is going to be a reward. If I see somebody wearing a $1,000 suit and I like it and it's going to motivate me, I go try it on and take a picture of myself wearing it, and I put it in my, in my visualization board. And he says, I want all these things. And at the end of the year, when I achieve the goal, many times I don't even buy it. He says, but I use the things to motivate me, because, feeling time and financial freedom is great, but getting into that brand new Bentley is different. So set those high goals, set the rewards high, because they have to drive you. Look, nobody gets excited about getting into a Hyundai Excel. I don't wake up in the morning going, oh, gee, I'm so excited. I'm going to drive a Hyundai Excel. No, a Mercedes-Benz MG, yeah. So pick the things that are going to drive you. Pick the things that are going to make you get emotional about it. If you're trying to lose weight, find that outfit that you're going to wear when you hit your weight goal. Hang it on the door. Visualize yourself going to your classroom reunion, on a fancy dinner, on a date, wearing that outfit. If you're a guy, and you have a thing for suits like I do, I have 2 things that drive me: cars and suits. So if you're a guy and you love cars, go out and find a car. I paid I think it was $350 just to get behind the wheel of a NASCAR car, just to get the feeling of what it would be to go 150, 175 miles an hour without a cop, following me. So whatever you need to do to get emotional about the goal, that's really, really critical. So very good, Edwin. Appreciate that. Let's see. Leslie, is that an old one, or did you want to talk again? Let me unmute you.
No, I was just going to say that the thing for me was when he was talking about the 4 types of thinkers, the spaghetti brain definitely hit me, because that is really something that happens to me. I hit an obstacle and I go, well, maybe that, whatever. And then after a while, my thinking's all confused. And so that really hit me as something I have a problem with. But I realized when he said, don't change your goals, but I think Edwin said this, that he reframed the goal in a different way. And I think that a real help for people, when you get an obstacle. I never thought of it that way before. I just thought, okay, well, I can't do it, so I have to do something else. So that was my big takeaway.
Awesome. Thank you, Leslie. What I got out of this, anybody else have any questions? If you want to speak, just go to participants and then click raise hand, and I'll be able to see you. If you're on the phone, unfortunately, I won't be able to do that. That's the benefit of getting on video. You don't have to show your pretty face. There is a Zoom application that you can download, so you can do it on your smartphone. Well, what I'm going to do is whoever is in a room, I want to try to get the phone people on if they have a question, because I know Olga usually calls in as well. If you're on a phone and or on a video and there's a lot of background noise, please mute yourself. I'm going to unmute everybody so I can get other people to ask questions as well, because this was a very important information that was shared today. So I'm going to unmute everybody. Please, 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 I'm asking nicely, mute yourselves. All you need to do is hit your mute button on your cell phone. I'm sure by now you figured out where that is so that no background noise comes in. If you're on video, you know all you have to do is hover over your image and you'll be able to do that. So I'm going to mute everybody, and anybody who has a question, please say your name and then ask your question so we know who you are, especially if you're on the phone. Of course. So does anybody have any questions that's on a phone?
Hey, Bert.
Yes.
It's Brian. So
hey, Brian.
I just wanted to make some observations about that. So one thing that really resonated with myself was Alan's absolute discontent with his circumstances when he was in the private, right? When he was growing up, that he was just absolutely at that rock bottom, right? Absolute discontent, and then his willingness to, the absolute belief that he would not allow his physical abilities to limit his life, right? So that was core inside of him, and also that allow some time, some variance in time. That was really helpful, because I'll set a goal, and if I don't hit it by that certain date, then I think of it as a failure. And I think Joseph mentioned that earlier. But that was very helpful to say, it's okay. Allow a couple more months. It's okay to adjust that time frame. Don't.
Yeah, Alan will set it for the next year.
Yeah.
Remember, we're growing into these goals. One of the things that struck me about Alan is he spoke about this on audio. And by the way, I wanted to share this with you guys. I was very fortunate in convincing Alan to let me offer you guys. He has over 14 audios with him explaining every chapter of Think and Grow Rich, and with not only the things that we read, but the important information and insights that he got from Joseph Green. So he's going to make available these audios, 14 audios over 14 hours, covering each of the chapters. The first one's going to cover self-control, desire, autosuggestion, specialized knowledge, imagination, planning, decision, faith, mastermind, sexual transmutation, the brain, and then there's one where the participants of these calls talked about how Think and Grow Rich and the statement impacted their lives, and then finally the Sixth Sense. So 14 audios, and he's going to include some additional other things. He's going to include some other audios that I'm going to include as well. So I'm going to put that link up in the TGR group and in the Aim for the Stars group. Aim for the Stars is a new group that's basically for the people that have committed to doing at least reading their statement out loud at least 5 times. We have over 50 people, and believe me, these guys are just blowing things up in their lives. I mean, a new guy, Devin, just had it in his statement that he was going to list a $500,000 real estate property. He went and did it. Edwin has just expanded his business. Bonnie has been, knocking it out of the moon with her production and her home. My goal has doubled and tripled, and I'm looking at some incredible things coming up based on the areas I'm moving in, besides moving to Florida to be closer with my favorite person in the world. So there's a lot of things that are happening, and they happen because we put it in our goal statement and we read it every day. And so, how do you emotionalize it? Well, if it's a relationship, it's very easy to do, And one of the things that Alan said in this audio on autosuggestion, which is the first one I'm going to make available because it's so powerful. I mean, it is, I listened to it and I was just like, God, I got to listen to it again. And last night I listened to it as I drifted off to sleep, and I was listening to it this morning again. And I took over 1.5 pages of notes. And what Alan said that impacted me so greatly was two things. One is he said, we're not changing. You have to stop thinking that this statement is going to change you. What we're doing is growing. Okay? And the example he made is if you say the statement every day and you don't start seeing yourself maybe taking the actions, or you don't start seeing yourself being as positive as you want, if you just don't see the impact right away, he said, think of it like planting grass in the ground, right? So what do you do when you plant grass in the ground? You go outside, you dig the hole, you put the seed in there, and then you water it and you add fertilizer. And then the next morning you wake up, and when the grass isn't growing there, you rip it out? You dig it out? No. So what do? You add more water and you add more fertilizer, and if the sun isn't out, you might be crazy enough to go get sun lamps so that you can give it the extra encouragement it needs. So now the third and fourth day, do you go outside and just because you don't see a little seed sprouting up from the ground, do you rip it out? No. What do you keep doing? You keep giving it support, encouragement, and giving it positive thoughts. And what happens? Eventually one day, the grass grows. And now you have a beautiful lawn. And it's the same thing with us. When we don't do the things that are in our statement, when we're not as positive as we should be, do not rip out the thought. Do not stop the statement. Do not say to yourself, oh my God, this shit don't work. It's not working for me. That's ripping out the seed. What you're doing is you're growing. Keep feeding the positive affirmations, the suggestions that are in the statement. Keep reading your statement. Keep reading the self-confidence formula. And tell yourself, I'm making progress. So if you put in your statement that I'm going to invite 10 people a day, and you only invited 2 people, don't beat yourself up and say, man, I suck. I'm horrible at this. I only invited 2 people. No. Say, I invited 2 people today. I'm making progress. I'm growing. Tomorrow, I'll do 3. And if tomorrow you don't do 3, don't beat yourself up again. Continue to give yourself that water and that fertilizer. And I hate to use the word fertilizer because it has a negative connotation, but fertilizer, while it's crap, it's food for the plant. So whatever you want, if it has a bad connotation for you, just use a different analogy. But the grass stuck at me because I've had in the past bald spots on my lawn. And so, I go out and buy the little treatment, and I put the little grass seed on it, and I cover it, and I water it, and I add the Miracle Grow to it. And, I paid a lot of attention, and the damn grass just would not grow in this one particular patch. And I was tempted to just dig it out. Instead, I went to a nursery, and I said to the guy, why is it happening? He says, because the soil is not right. So think about that for a second. If you're not seeing the results you want, what is the equivalent of our soil? Isn't it our subconscious mind and the thoughts and beliefs that we currently have? So what do? Do we rip it out? Or do we just put in some new soil? Or do we add some new, more fertilizer with different minerals that will revitalize the soil? And if the soil is really bad, we need to replace some of that soil, just like we do if we're planting a plant. So if it's not growing, it's because the soil doesn't have the right nutrients. And the soil is maybe too negative and there's too many limiting beliefs. So what must we do? We must continue giving it support, encouragement by reading our statement and the self-confidence formula. That's one of the key things that I got from that audio. The other thing that Alan said that stuck out with me is, anybody else have anything they'd like to add? I tried the audio. Let's try that one more time and see if that works. I'm going to unmute everybody. Just say your name. Works every time, doesn't it? Okay, so anybody have any?
This is Jamie Morris. Can you hear me?
Yes, Jamie, we can hear you. Go ahead, buddy.
All right, what I took out of that was, the most powerful thing, because of what before I even joined this group, I was reading and watching Greg Braden, and he's hot and heavy on not hot and heavy. He's just been around the world and talked to Tibetan monks and everything of how the matrix works, and he says that only when your thought and emotions are, join forces is when things happen. And when he mentioned, that number 3, when he said to review everything and, make sure that it's properly emotionalized and things started happening for him. That's what hit home. And right after he said that and he talked about his dad, and I just kind of scribbled a couple extra words about my father into my statement, and immediately tears started coming down my face. I think that's really going to help me out.
Awesome. Yeah, there's that thing about praise. The main thing is how important emotionalizing everything is. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, Brian. Anybody else? I'm sorry, Jamie. Anybody else want to ask a question? Say your name and then ask your question.
Yeah, this is Jim.
Hey, Jim.
Hey, good morning. So I had typed in there, but just going to reiterate. Creating a visualization board, is that helpful to us?
Yeah, Alan is a strong believer in a visualization board, but he wants you to focus on visualizing the 12-month goal.
Okay.
Okay, because putting on there, like a $500,000 car, that your brain is going to fight you on that too hard. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You have to build the belief up to that. So let's start with what you want in 12 months, and then you can put, if that $500,000 car is something you want, that goes in your envisioning statement, because now you're going to be building up belief in it. And so you put up that picture, and maybe you go out and take a test drive on it. And there's nothing that says that you can't have it, because we must approach everything in a state of faith or belief that we can have everything. And we must at some point believe in the formula and in this principle and understand that whatever we want in life, even though we don't know how to get it right now,
Right.
even though we don't know how to get it right now, that at some point our subconscious mind will give us the plan, the idea, or the purpose. And remember, if we fail to achieve a goal, it's not because the goal was wrong, because we just didn't have the right plan. So that's what happens. He doesn't, what did he do? 2 years later, he didn't achieve that goal. So what did he do? He decided that he had to approach it differently. And for him, sorry, I had to unmute everybody for a second. For him, it was that every time he looked at that house, he probably thought to himself, contractor. So if he had a bad relationship with his father, because he said, he had to work on his relationship with his dad, there was an emotion there, right? It was, my relationship with my dad is not right, and he's looking at all these contractors and he's thinking, dad, and he's realized that emotion was more powerful than whatever all the other positive emotions were. So it wasn't until he got himself square with his dad that he was able to move away from the negative emotion. And it took him, and look, we're not perfect. It took him 2 years to realize that, but he did realize it. And then,
Yeah, I thought that was really good insight of Alan.
All right. I'm going to have to, I'm sorry, I had to mute everybody. So, yeah, and again, once you set the goal, that goal does not change. The plan may change, but the goal does not change until you achieve it. You just keep working at it and find a better plan. That's all. And later on in the mastermind group, he talks about that. But I'm going to be ending this call in about 5 minutes, but I do want to go over one of the things that he mentioned on the audio on autosuggestion. And it was this, that you want to read your statement twice a day, minimum. But the most important time is just before you go to bed at night. And I asked him about that, and I said, it's very difficult for me to go to bed at night screaming my statement out. He says, just read it out loud. You don't have to, go into a yelling state. He says, but what you want to do at night is every night before you go to bed is you want to picture yourself having achieved that goal. So if your goal is that you're making $100,000 a month, you want to see yourself waking up in the morning. Where would you live if you were making $100,000 a month? What kind of clothes would you put on? If you're working out of your home, what would your home office look like? If you're working out of an office outside your home, see yourself going outside, getting into the car that you want. And you walk yourself through the entire day. And he said, and if you have a weight loss goal, see yourself going to lunch and making the right choices. See yourself pushing away that Big Mac and reaching instead for a chicken salad. You know, see yourself making the right choices. See people giving you what you want, if it's the esteem, the respect, the accolades. See that during the course of the day, and take yourself from the time you wake up to the time you go back to sleep, and you see yourself laying in the bed, and the bed that you want to lay in. And if you see yourself living in a different place, he said, like, I see myself living, even when I'm in Denver, I see myself laying in my beautiful home in Hawaii, but now I have a goal that I have a home in Miami and I have a home in California. So I see these homes, these are part of his goal statement, his envisioning statement. So he sees himself, buying these homes and walking himself through the process. And he doesn't do this once because, again, what is the most powerful principle in the book? Autosuggestion. So we do this visualization every day, every night. And he says sometimes he falls asleep while he's doing this. He says, but make sure you don't fall asleep with the TV on. He says that's the most detrimental thing you can do. You're going to get, your subconscious mind is awake. I mean, when you're asleep, you're not asleep. Your heart is still pumping, your lungs are still breathing. If there's a loud sound, you're going to hear it. Your subconscious mind is alert. It's only your conscious mind that's asleep. But your subconscious mind is listening and protecting you, even when you sleep. If I'm sure you've been asleep at sometimes and heard a noise in your house and woken up. Other times you're asleep and you're dreaming, you're having a bad dream and you wake up in a sweat and you think that it was real. Your mind does not know the difference between real and not real. So when you begin to imagine and visualize the life that you want, it's just another way of making the statement happen. It's another repetition, but one that uses guided imagery. And he says what you want to do is you want to get to the point where you've already memorized your statement. And so as you read, as a result of my genuine effort, I am now enjoying time and financial freedom. See yourself when you say those words. Imagine what time and financial freedom means to you. Abundance. I see dollar bills raining on me when I say the word abundance. Peace of mind. To me, I see an image of me putting my head on the pillow at night with a smile on my face. Peace of mind. And excellent health. I see myself going to jiu-jitsu class and working out with weights and running and doing all the things that excellent health would provide me. And then yesterday, as I was reading my statement, because, to tell you the truth, I was so beat up over doing those hundreds that I woke up in the morning and I really didn't want to do my statement. I was like, damn, I don't want to read this one more time. I am so done with it. And I had to work on my mindset. I had to really work on my mindset. So I went outside. It was a beautiful day, thank to God. So I went outside and I got to the part where it says, as a result of my genuine effort, I am now experiencing time and financial freedom, abundance, peace of mind, and excellent health. Right, Darius? That's how fast we go when we're doing that statement. And then I got to the part where it says, I enjoy driving my brand new white with a black interior BMW 3 Series convertible. And I saw the car. I pictured the car standing right at the end of blocking my driveway. Right? And I saw it right there with the top down, and I said, wow, such a beautiful day. I could just get inside that car and just go, grab my Dunkin' Donuts because I can have 1 cup of coffee today because I'm no longer on that 3-day refresh thing, which, hey, but I lost 5 pounds. It was great, and it gave me a lot more focus. Unfortunately, don't do it when you're doing the 100-day challenge because you're very low carb. But I saw myself getting in that car and just taking a drive. And then I said, wow, if I was living in Tampa, I could pick up Bonnie and put her in the car and we could just take a drive down the beach and just really enjoy a beautiful day and, pretend it's a Sunday, or a day that we're both off and just, really just enjoy the sunshine and the wind blowing through the few specks of hair that I still have left on my head and just enjoy life, because those are the things that are going to drive you. It's not the work. It's not the money. It's what you can do with the work, with the money that you get as a result of your effort. And remember, money is not inherently evil. Money, prior to money becoming what it is today, money was that if you were a great farmer, you went out and planted your fields and then you sowed, you reaped what you sowed. And what you had in life was a direct proportion to how hard you were willing to work and take care of your property. So money is just a measurement of how fruitful you have been at your work. It has no other connotation. If you have a lot of money, then you have been very fruitful. You have planted your harvest, you have taken care of it, and you are reaping what you sow. And the beautiful thing that somebody said the other day to me, I think it was yesterday, they said, we were talking about the self-confidence formula, and they said, one of the things that's great about everything that we're doing here is it's all about the win-win, And I said, yeah, that's why it's so important to read the self-confidence formula. I succeed by attracting to myself the forces I wish to use and the cooperation of other people. I engage only in transactions that benefit all whom it affects. That's the win-win. I induce others to serve me because of my willingness to serve others. It's critical that we understand that number 5 is just the golden rule and a little bit extra. And so if we walk through life looking for that win-win and we do nothing to others that we would not want others to do to us, and we understand that in order to be served, we must first serve others. And that doesn't mean we literally serve them. If you're in the capacity of a salesperson or a financial planner or a real estate agent, the way you serve your client is by giving them the best presentation, by introducing them to the best products, by giving them the best service. That's how you serve, okay? And so if we do that, if we serve our client, if we over-deliver consistently, we're going to get it back, And I challenge you all today to pick up a book. It's available in PDF. I might be charitable enough today to give it to you. It's called Persuasion by Cialdini. And in it, he talks about the 5 hidden persuaders, the 5 ways of getting people to win them to your cause that are subliminal, hidden, as he calls it. It's not a long book. It's a pretty quick read, and it's really critical that you understand that the way we induce others to serve us is by serving them, and there's ways that we can, because the number 1 hidden persuader, I'll give it to you as a freebie today, is reciprocity. If I have a boss that doesn't like me and I start bringing him coffee every day, and if I start, treating him like a friend, if every time I see him and I don't like him or her, but when I look at him, I say, friend, he is my friend. He is fast becoming my best friend. I know he'll be my friend. We're going to start sending out that vibe, that vibration, that he is our friend. And he's going to pick up on that, and he's going to start to, or she is going to start receiving that, and because that's what our face is going to show. Remember, you can walk into an office and know who's pissed off, who's having a great day, and you know who got laid last night just by looking at their face, right? It all shows up. So be aware of that. And where does that come from? It comes right from our thoughts. The thoughts we have are what everybody else picks up on. So if I'm thinking positive thoughts, if I'm thinking focus on my goals, and I'm thinking, what I need to do to accomplish my goals, other people are going to look at me and go, wow, that guy knows where he's going in life. I want to follow him. Because what you're going to find is that you are all leaders. And other people are going to follow you because your purpose is clear and theirs isn't. You look at all the great leaders throughout the world. They had a clear, definite purpose. And sometimes that definite purpose wasn't that good. Tojo in Japan, Hitler in Germany. Sometimes these negative purposes, but still people followed. It didn't matter because even the lie repeated often enough becomes the truth. So bear that in mind. And the last thing I wanted to share with you before we sign off is everybody that's in this group And this call started out with 23 people. We lost a few, but that's okay. They're losing out on the major points here. And that is that everyone that's here is here for a reason. You have all been attracted to this place and time. There is a message that you need to get. And that message, I keep repeating it every week, is because that's part of the science, isn't it? So if I keep repeating it and introducing it to you in a different way every week, one day, if you're not exercising, eventually it's going to get in there, right? And that message is that you must have a definite purpose. You must read it every day, and you must look for other ways to emotionalize it and use autosuggestion to drive it home. And even if you're not taking all the actions that you should take, do not beat yourself up. Continue to support the goal. Continue to read your statement. And when you have a negative day, just read that statement with even more emotion. Shout it. Go outside. Go to a park. Look at the stars. Look at the moon. Look at the sun and just shout it out to the universe. This will not get me today. I am better than this because it is July 14th, 2016. And whatever comes after that, right? And that's not my birthday, but it's my son's birthday. So always pick a date that's important to you. So use that. So remember, you are here for a reason and a purpose. We all wish we had learned this 20, 30 years ago. But we wouldn't, if we had, we wouldn't have learned it. Right now, you're here for a reason and a purpose. But here's what I'm going to tell you. And here's my cautionary flag. I'm throwing out a flag on the flag. And that is, do not do what so many others do. Because you now will have, as you continue to do this, and you're going to see, as everybody else in that group, and if you're not in the accountability group chat, you need to just be committed to read your statement 5 times and do a video or even an audio. But you got to get in there because the people in there are just insane. And everybody, Olga, Edwin, Bonnie, others that I can't mention because they promised to for me not to, myself and others, and some that I've forgotten. They're just things are happening and they're getting it, that it's not a coincidence, that the subconscious mind will start to see these opportunities and you'll begin drawing to yourself the people if you need the people, the ideas if you need the ideas, the money if you need the money. Napoleon Hill, I was reading his book, Outwitting the Devil, and he talks about, and I finally understood why Napoleon Hill wasn't as successful as he should have been. And he explains it that up until about 1923, he had done all the research, but he still hadn't committed to writing his original publication, The Laws of Success. And he didn't have the money. He would have needed $25,000. And one of the things that I picked up was that Napoleon Hill had one problem. You know what it was? Spaghetti brain. He had too many goals. He worked as a sales manager for LaSalle agency. He was getting paid $10 per salesperson to train them. They had 3,000 salespeople. This isn't in a day and age where the average worker made like $5, $10 a week. And he was making $10 a salesperson with 3,000 people. That's $30,000. And you know what he did? He built up this organization, and then he decided that it wasn't what he wanted to do, and he walked away from it. Then he started the Golden Rule magazine, launched it with no money of his own. Launched it, and then turned it over to the employees because he didn't want to do it anymore. That was number 2. And in listening to his story on Outwitting the Devil, I got the impression that he built all these potential sources of wealth, but he never kept them. He walked away from every single one until he finally felt worthy enough, I guess is the right word. And, remember, he is not the shining example of the formula. He's the one that was able to see what all the other people were doing and identify it. And even though he did the formula, it took him over 20 years to understand every part of it. So eventually, after he published Laws of Success, Laws of Success were published in 1928. What happened in 1929? The Depression hit, right? And so all of a sudden, the book that he launched as a published item did very well. It made him a wealthy man. And then because of the Depression, he lost most of his money. And then in 1937, he published Think and Grow Rich. Why? Because this country was still in the depths of a depression. Our depression, it was not like this one that we had, where the government threw money at the problem. In that one, the government said, no, we're going to close the banks. We're not going to throw money at the problem. And it wasn't until later on one of the presidents came up with work projects, and of course, World War II is what drove us out of the recession, out of the depression. But we didn't have a solution. So in 1937, when he wrote Think and Grow Rich, there were still soup lines. There were still people living on the streets or in tents. There was hobo camps, camps of people that would just get on a property and they would just live there, and they would just find scraps and heat them up and make hobo soup. That's where the country was. And yet he said he would see these people, broken people, and yet you could still walk in the streets and see somebody who had the right thoughts. Their suit didn't look like it was worth $1 million. Their clothing didn't look like they were worth $1 million. But in their brain, they were worth $1 million because they were thinking and growing rich. And that's why he created Think and Grow Rich. And he launched it. And of course, we know that it has been a phenomenal success. And ultimately, people came from that, like Og Mandino, the Scrolls, W. Clement Stone, his greatest student. W. Clement Stone read Think and Grow Rich, took a $100 investment and built it into $1 billion company. But later on, he met Napoleon Hill as he was retired, hired him, paid him an incredible salary for 10 years, and created a formal Laws of Success, or the Laws of Success course, introduced it to all his salespeople, and within a 10-year period, his company went from like being worth $10 million, $20 million to being worth like half a billion dollars. And, the board of directors had bitched and moaned about him paying Napoleon Hill so much money. And so ultimately, Napoleon Hill died a wealthy man, because W. Clement Stone had the ability to do that. But himself, he went through fortune after fortune, and he had a lot of adversity. But even through all that adversity, he still stuck to his major commitment, which was to write a book. And believe me, every motivational speaker, you can mention Anthony Robbins, you can mention Bob Proctor, Brian Tracy, and I've read them all. I've been a personal development freak since the age of 19. Every single one has read Think and Grow Rich. There's not one motivational speaker that if you ask, did you read Think and Grow Rich, hasn't read it. And they all understand these principles. But here's where they all fail. And I'm going to tell you right now. And I don't know if it's on purpose or it's because it doesn't sell that well. And that is that you must, and Napoleon Hill doesn't even hide it. I could see if maybe, Alan stumbled upon the secret. Because what is the secret? Read the statement out loud in a highly emotionalized state, right? That's the secret. Well, if you read the chapter on autosuggestion, Napoleon Hill says that. He says, plain unemotional words do not affect the subconscious mind. So why is it that we go to all these speakers? And Bob Proctor, he has this thing called a gold card. And somebody sent me some material about him having a seminar on Think and Grow Rich. And do I want to go? And I said, no. I'd rather listen to Alan. Why? Because Alan put it all together. And what the gold card is, it says, by July 14, 2016, I am so happy and grateful. Now that came out of Bob Proctor. I don't know if it's even his, but he's the one that started promoting it. And Bob Proctor wants you to take your goal, put it on a 3x5 index card or a small business card, and put it in your pocket, and every now and then just read it. Well, taking out of my pocket and just reading it is not going to create an emotional state. And therefore, what's going to happen? Will it work? Yes, it will. Repetition will work. However, what's going to really drive it is saying it out loud with emotion, enthusiasm. Okay, as much physicality as you can, ramming it into your body with clapping your hands or punching your fist or slapping your chest, tapping your shoulder, whatever you can to anchor it into your body so that you really get that statement. And so once you start doing it this way, even if you record yourself and you listen to the recording, in your brain, you'll see yourself doing those things. It just gets locked in there. So I don't need to go to Bob Proctor's seminar. Thank you for sending me the invite, but I don't need to go there. What I need to do is just get to work on my statement. That's what I need to do. And all I need to do that is just read it 10, 20 times a day. Because I'm going to tell you, if you guys aren't doing it 5 times, you're not going to get the maximum effect. The real benefit of the statement starts after 10 repetitions. Now, I'll ask Edwin. Edwin, how hard is it to do 10 repetitions now? I'm unmuting you.
Okay.
How hard is it to do 10?
It's not even difficult. Like, I mean, honestly, like when I first started, it was difficult to do 5 because I just wanted to be part of the group. But then like a couple challenges here and there got me to 10, and then I stuck with 10. You know, and then I think, you know, when Derek challenged you, Bert, to do to challenge everybody in the group to do 20.
Yeah,
I'm doing 20, but I mean that's kind of crazy, right, to start. But you got to start somewhere, 5, and then you'll bump it up to 10 with in no time. You know.
Yeah, I mean, I think your high number was what, 157?
Right, 157. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that came from a challenge, but regardless, I mean, doing 157, I did before that. My highest number was 52.
Right.
Which made me memorize. And now, I mean, you know, I posted the video, and that came like maybe, I don't know if it was like a week after, a couple of days after I did it, or maybe the day of that I did it. And it comes from being able to memorize is just doing the repetitions. You get it once or twice, which I used to do, you know, before we created the accountability group. I used to do it once or twice. Sometimes I will forget. And once or twice, you know, like, especially if, like, you're reading it, just like if you read a book, like, you know, if you read a book, you're kind of reading like a book. You're like, okay, you know, the story starts like this, and that's how you read your DMPS if you're doing it once or twice, because then you got other things you're doing in your day. You're busy. You got to go to work. You got to pick stuff up. You got to run errands. You got to go to the bank. You got to do deposits or whatever it is you're doing. You know, doing it once or twice, you know, you're basically gonna, okay, I did my statement. Now let me get back to my real life. But if you do it now, you bump it up to 5 times, then it starts to penetrate. It starts to penetrate your mind. It starts to impact what you're doing a moment to moment. It starts to impact, you know, how you actually take actions on what you have on your DMPS. You know, like in my statement, I was having a little bit of issues with taking action on my business as I started putting in there, okay, 10 collection calls, sending out 100 texts, you know, something I have procrastinated on my marketing for about 1.5 years. I put it in my statement within a month, you know, where this stuff doesn't happen overnight, you know. But once I put it in my statement for a month, finally I'm sending out about 1,500 texts a week for marketing. Whereas in my statement I only have 100, so I'm surpassing that number by a lot, and it's already having a lot of growth in my business just by that one little aspect that I put in my DNPS. So I mean, it applies to everybody. You know, if you put in your statement, I'm going to eat 2 full plates of raw greens a day and working at 4 times a week. You know, you're going to work out 4 times a week. That's what I got. For a whole year, I was working out twice a week for a whole year since last summer. And then because I was like, I don't have the time, you know. I put it in my statement. Within 2 months, I'm working out twice a week. I work out twice a week, and I play basketball twice a week, you know. So that gets my 4 times a week. Whereas before, I just didn't have the time to do it, you know. And then there's a bunch of other stuff in my statement on, you know, on position for global domination and massive extension of my business. And my business is becoming global, you know. Like I'm setting up my website. I'm setting up this. I'm getting coached by people that have 20 locations in their business. That they coach national chains. What else? I mean, I have my relationship that this, you know, is growing to another level. You know, it's more passionate. It's more romantic. I'm more sweet. You know, I feel I was called sweet by my wife for the first time, like in months, you know, the other day. So, you know, little things like that. I mean, it just emanates you because it's all in your statement. And that's what the statement does to you, you know. And like at first, you know, it is kind of like, oh, you know, it is May 30, 2016, and I don't dare stop. So grateful to be easy and effortlessly receive 100. That's how it starts at first, right? But then you ramp up the reps to 5. You're like, man, if I'm gonna do this, it might as well mean something, you know. And then you ramp it up a little bit more, 5, 7 times, and then 8, and then, you know, and then you start learning. If you join the accountability group, you're gonna get feed. You might not get. You'll get new insights. You know, you get new insights on how you can improve your DMPS. You'll see, oh, that person does it like this. This person reads their self-confidence formula like that. This person reads their daily major purpose statement, you know, like this. And so all those little insights, they stack on top of each other, and you're able to basically make it true, you know, make all these little things, attending these calls, you know, the little thing about what Alan said about asking the 3 questions. All these little things stack up on top of each other so you can make your DMPS a reality. you know, and that's what matters at the end of the day. So you can achieve your dreams, and you can give back what you're able to get. You know, you're able to give back to the world, and that's what, you know, you want. Everybody wants to achieve their dreams out here, so that's what this is all about. So, you know, I'm glad that I'm part of these calls. I'm part of the DMPS accountability group. You know, everybody should make the commitment to at least doing 5. That way you can, you know, become the people that, you know, that are doing big things. You know, Olga, Bert, me, Andy. I mean, all the people in the group, Michelle, people, I don't know if some people that are like, might not even be on this call right now, they're all making, you know, big moves in their life. And it doesn't have to be necessarily, I mean, the income goal is a big part of it, but you're going to make bigger impacts in all areas of your life, not just your income. You know, you might not own a business, you might have your job. It doesn't matter. You know, as a mother, father, you know, all these little things stack on top of each other, so you can give back even more of yourself. Bert, I think you're muted. I think you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. You know, I can be a little bit of a hard ass, and I have like these things like, you know, if you're going to commit to doing 5, a little bit, right? A little bit of a hard ass. But, you know, it stems from my no bullshit belief. You know, I hold myself to a certain level of performance, and, you know, if you say you're going to hold yourself to that level of performance, I expect you to do it. And if you can't, I don't beat you up about it, but I will kick you out of the group. So I recently kicked somebody out of the group, the chat group, and they sent me an email saying, you know, Bert, you're no Tony Robbins, and you're doing this from a position of ego, drive, and significance. And I didn't answer them, and here I'm going to answer it here publicly. No, I'm not Tony Robbins, because if I was, you'd all be paying me $15,000 for what I'm producing here, right? Because he don't do shit for free. Okay, so that's number 1. Number 2, I don't want to be Tony Robbins. I don't like his teeth, and I don't want to be that tall. Number 3, of course I'm doing it from ego, drive, and significance. I'm a salesperson. In order for a salesperson for the guy who runs across the touchdown, the end zone, and slams the football down, isn't doing it from a point of contribution to the world. Okay? There's nothing wrong from being ego-driven and working from significance. When Tony Robbins was 23, 24 years old, and he was going on radio stations saying that he could cure phobias, and he had the fast phobia cure. He was doing swish patterns, and he wasn't talking from a point of, he was trying to build his brand. He was coming from a place of significance and ego drive. And it wasn't until he got in his 50s that he started changing, like we all do. But, you know, when you're sitting on a couple of $1 billion, it makes it easier to no longer worry about ego drive and significance, you know, of course. But I don't do that. I do go from ego drive and significance, and I'm not ashamed of that. But I'm also a contributor. So I embrace all parts of my personality. I know what made me successful, and I'm not going to say that it was wrong, because, yes, I'm competitive. I mean, we showed that this week. John did over 200 statements. You think that came from charity? Contribution? It came because he wanted to do it for himself. It wasn't about even being competitive. He calls it net time. You know, he's sitting in the car. Edwin does them mostly when he's sitting in his car driving around visiting his locations. So rather than listening to music or listening to the radio and getting all kinds of negative bullshit news, he'd rather read a statement. I'm not going to say, hey, that's a wrong idea. It's like, is it coming from significance and ego drive? Possibly. Who cares? I don't use those words to hurt somebody. I'm glad if you're ego driven. You know, because it means that you're gonna go. You know, when the quarterback gets that MVP trophy, you know, he doesn't go, oh gee, you know, here it is. I don't want it. And that extra, you know, $10 million that I get for being MVP in the Super Bowl, I don't want that. Bullshit. You know, so don't. You know, so yeah, I know exactly what drives me. I know my motivation, and I'm totally about that. And I do this, and I understand where they were coming from. I understand where they're coming from, and I don't challenge their beliefs. I challenge their opinion about me, because this person never, ever, they joined the group and they were never an active participant. They weren't supporting, they weren't encouraging, and they weren't doing the statement. So in my book, if you join a group that says you must read it 5 times a day and you need to at least post it once a day, that's all you need to do. Before midnight every night, just put in 5 DMPS, 5 SCF. That's all you're required to do. If you can't do that because, you know, and I posted recently, the only excuse is if you're in the North Pole or the South Pole where you have no Wi-Fi. Other than that, what excuse is there for not going 1 time a day? And if you don't have the time, hey, I understand. You just don't need to be part of that group. That's okay. Look, it's not a big goddamn deal. You're going to still be in the main group. You're just not going to be in the group chat. The group chat is about people that are part of the mastermind that want to take their lives to another level. And they want to hold themselves accountable. They want to support and encourage other people. And if that's you, then you belong in that group. And if that's not you, there's nothing wrong. It's not a negative. You can still accomplish your goals. You don't have to be in there. You know, it's like Paul J. Meyer used to say, though. You know, if you ever want to be as successful as you want to be in life, then you'll have to do that by joining me. So if you ever want to be here's the Paul Meyer line, right? So if you want to be as successful as you want in life, you're going to have to commit to doing your statement at least 5 times. You don't have to do the 100, 200 like us crazy folks. I didn't want to do 100. I did it because Kelvin challenged me. So what I'm saying to you is, if you want to take it to another level, be part of that accountability group. I have no problem with letting anybody in. But if you are going to go in, understand the rules. 1 time a day, posting, 5 repetitions of the DMPS, 5 of the self-confidence formula. If your statement is too long, everybody will help you shred it to pieces and get rid of all the verbs, adverbs, adjectives, and all the other crap we all put in there. The statement can be very short and sweet, and you want to just drive home the point. So with that said, remember the main point, which is we have all attracted each other, and we are here for a specific reason, and that is that you want to change your lives. And while I have no prejudice against going to webinars and seminars and all these other things, if you're doing that and you're still doing your statement every day, then I say kudos. But if you're going to use it to replace doing the statement, then I say you're barking up the wrong tree. Because I see it with every UPW group that I've been involved in, 3 months, 4 months later after UPW, nobody's participating and everybody's back to their old habits. Why? Because the hardest thing to change about habits is habit itself. And while you're there in that environment, everything is rah, rah, go, go, super excited. I've been in sales all my life. I've been to, rah, rah meetings my entire life. And yeah, they get you pumped up. And that day you drink an extra cup of coffee and you make another 3 calls. And then the next day you make 2 calls. And then the third day you make 1 call. And then by Thursday, you're sitting with the rest of the guys complaining about how bad the business is, how bad the economy is, and how your customers are all jerks because they're not buying. So what I'm saying to you is, instead of doing that, take out your statement. Commit to reading it 5 times a day. The magic starts at 10 or above. That's when you memorize it, and that's when you know it by heart. Edwin knows it by heart. I know it by heart. Ursula knows it by heart. John better friggin' know it by heart. He's read it 200 times. Brian probably knows it by heart. Everybody that's reading it, Diamond Donna, Andy, everybody that I can see on my screen, the phone numbers, they probably know it by heart. I don't know who they are. But the key is, I have it here because I just haven't memorized the entire self-confidence formula yet. But I commit to doing that at least 25 times today, and I'm going to probably go to 50 sometime this week. And that's the only thing. But my statement, that's a done deal, and that's where you want to be. And the only way you're going to get there is by reading the statement, reading the statement, reading the statement, using emotion, using emotion, using emotion. Trust this process. Trust the process. There's tons of people that I can bring up as success stories. I try to drip them in as needed. So with that in mind, I'm not going to ask any questions because we're really way over time. So I'm going to end the meeting now. This is recorded. I did record this one, so I will make this recording available. I usually don't like to do that because I believe that if you really want to get the benefit out of this in today's technological world, there's tons of ways you can do that. So like showing up, right? Exactly. Thank you. Appreciate that. So I'm going to leave you guys and say have a great day, and make sure that you read that statement. And if you want to be part of the group, of the accountability group, and you're ready to commit to 5 a day, just go into the TGR group chat and type in I am in or yes, and I will make sure to add you. Okay? All right. You guys have a great day, and thank you again for your time, and thank you for your participation as well.